So Carol Burden is the director of permaculture at Urban Harvest. She hopes to inspire others to garden and live healthier lifestyles. She has won awards for her involvement in environmental education for youth and her support of school gardens. Her goals are to grow healthy communities through access to fresh fruits and vegetables, to develop a lifelong love of gardening through nutrition education initiatives and community collaborations, cultivate shared green spaces, and be a storyteller of ecological gardening. With further ado, Carol Burden.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here at the Houston Arboretum, and the beautiful natural landscape is pretty awesome because I haven't been here in a while in person. And thank you, Native Plant Society of Houston chapter, for having me as a guest. I appreciate that. So the title of my presentation is Urban Permaculture. So today I'm going to share a little bit about what is permaculture, what it is, and then about the ethics. I'm going to discuss the ethics, some of the principles, and how we have applied them at Urban Harvest, specifically within our education and school programming. Along with that, I also talk about our permaculture certification design program and opportunities that we have to become part of that in the next year. Okay, just a little bit for me to get to know you. I see a lot of familiar faces just from the environmental community, and also new master gardeners in training, I recognize. And also the current permaculture certification design students, the 22, 23, or 23 cohort, please stand up. And let's give them a applause. Awesome. Okay. Now, if you have been gardening for 1 year or less, I'm going to out you. Could you please stand up if you've been gardening for 1 year or less? Nobody. Okay. 2 years. Okay, so if you've been with the Native Plant Society for more than 5 years, stand up. More than 5 years. Okay. Oh, sure. How's this? Is that better?
No, that's not quite.
Hello. Okay. Okay, thank you. So now thank you for saying. I just wanted to acknowledge your expertise in the room, because it has been a good minute, because it's been 20 years that I was in this room and I went through the Master Naturalist training. And when I went through that training, it was because I started to work for Urban Harvest, to work with schools and to teach gardening and to grow food. But to grow food, I really had limited experience being from the suburbs of Houston on the name of our local flora and fauna. And so, this collection of slides I will go through, and it has been an evolution to integrate native plants, conservation, into the system of growing food. Okay, let me see. Okay, here's some information about me. And is it okay? Can y'all all hear me without the mic? Okay.
No.
Okay.
Did you change this? It's not.
Oh, I did change the slide, so it's not showing. I think I'm going to need some IT help. I don't know if we had that presenter view. It's not. Okay, well, we're figuring this out. If you could turn to someone next to you and just introduce yourself and just share what is the best thing happening in your garden right now during the heat. Nothing. And if you're already on Zoom, just in the chat, what's going on in your garden? If you can hear my voice, raise your hand. If you can hear my voice, raise your hand. If you can hear my voice, clap 2 times. Great. Okay, so just one person share what's the best thing going on in your garden right now. Raise your hand if you'd like to share. Okay, I'm gonna call Ducey. Yes.
My papaya tree is doing great. I'm having a baby, a little papaya.
Okay. Okay, we have someone in the back. I'm gonna choose one more person to share in the back. Yes.
I came back from vacation and my obedience plan was great. And almost no one. So that.
Wonderful. Okay, everybody put that on your list, obedient plants and papayas. Okay, so here's my information. Previous to January, I was the director of garden education over classes and adult education and school programming. And urban harvest, like raise your hand if you shop at the farmer's market. Great, because I've seen you. Super.
We chop while we work.
Yes, yes. So it's very important that Mark has a presence at the farmer's market because to grow food, we need to grow native plants and have a healthy ecosystem. So we operate the largest farmer's market in the Houston region. We teach over 80 organic classes. And our affiliate community garden network has over 170 gardens within the network. We expose Houston area youth to the wonders of gardening in the natural world. So of those 170 gardens, 50%, actually I think it's 60% because it's like 60-40. 60% of them are school gardens at public and private schools and community centers. So 60% are for the youth and the other 40% are, adult community centers and so on. And we have a mobile market program. So we go into communities in need with our mobile market, and citywide, we run the Double Up program, which is matching benefits for EBT and SNAP dollars so that you can get a discount on locally grown produce. So what is permaculture? I have some definitions here. So permaculture is an indigenous science of working in partnership and reciprocity with the land and cycles of nature. It is a holistic approach for the creation of a sustainable human habitat. And it was coined from 2 words, permanent agriculture. And so it's to take the conventional agriculture, which has a whole lot of inputs, and to look at Mother Nature and the way Native Indigenous people did garden sustainably, because, in Houston, we want to acknowledge the Karankawa, who basically roamed this part of Texas, of the Gulf Coast in northern Mexico, for 10,000 years. And they basically worked and lived in harmony with the land, reciprocity with the land, and as opposed to conventional agriculture, which is market driven and it's at a profit and increasing profit. So this method was developed by Bill Mollison, who was a wildlife biologist, because in the 70s, coming from a background as a hunter and a trapper and living with the land, and seeing that with the deforestation of the forest biome, basically it was changing the climate to become more arid and changing the landscape and the water, the transpiration that the plants release into the air basically, goes back into the cloud formation. It draws the water down back into the water table. So we were seeing deforestation and the collapse of the agricultural system because it was becoming a desert. So we had starvation going on in Africa, just mass starvation, because of the system of removing ourselves from nature and just being market driven. And so it was just very short-sighted. So he also spent time with the native Aboriginal people in Australia. He spent a lot of time with the Aboriginal people. He lived with the Aboriginal people, and also as a professor, he did research, and he wrote a book on the history of fermentation and food plants and so on. And so a lot of his observations, he formulated, the permaculture certification design program. And at the core, the ethics are earth care, people care, and fair share. So if it is not good for the earth, don't do it. If it's not good for people, we're not going to do it. So it's a lens in which to view the world and to design solutions for the problems that we're experiencing. Now I have this slide in here so that we can look at the difference between organic gardening and permaculture. So organic gardening is based on the principles of using nature to grow our fruits and vegetables. And so permaculture is taking it to the next step of replicating systems in nature. And so if you can see that within the permaculture system, we have animals as part of the system. We have a water source, so that wildlife is part of the system. So we have a whole system integrated into the design. Now, the different domains of permaculture, basically for design, we want to look at community, economics, green building, appropriate technology, forest, plant, animal, soil, water. And when you look at plants, a huge focus on native plants, vegetables, herb, medicinals. And so just like the native indigenous people, all of the plants in our system, had uses for fiber, dyeing, trading, spiritual properties, because all of the trees are the elders. And so in terms of relationships, all of the plants and animals we are related. And so to look at the relationships and relations, we want to look at the whole system to design a system with minimal inputs and higher yield. So I'm kind of jumping ahead to some of the principles, but basically these are the different domains in creating a permanent culture. Now, again, I'm just reiterating the ethics: earth care, fair share, and people care. This is the permaculture flower, and you can see that the ethics and design principles just spiral around to these different domains. So if you're designing your garden, or you're designing a home place, your work, or just decisions about technology, we would sort of follow this little symbol. And this is where I got it, permacultureprinciples.com. They're a great resource. And here are the 12 principles. And number 1, observe and interact. So I'm going to show you some examples that we have, because that's a very important one. And catch and store energy, obtain a yield, apply self-regulation and feedback, use and value renewable resources and services, produce no waste so that we have a closed system. And we're going to design from patterns to details. So we're going to look at the whole pattern and then the finer details. Very important for urban permaculture is that we're going to integrate rather than segregate. Use small, slow solutions. Use and value diversity. And I heard Reba speak to that as well. Use edges and value the marginal, and creatively use and respond to change. So these are the 12 principles, and I will highlight a couple of these within the context of urban agriculture. So here's a Bill Mollison quote that I'd like to refer back to, that we're only truly secure when we can look out our kitchen window and see our food growing and our friends working nearby. So is that true for you? Just being outside or being able to look out a window, does that build your emotional health, mental health?
Yes.
Okay, so a little bit about current land use in the United States. So of the entire United States, 6% of the nation's area is for agriculture and people. And then if we go a step back and we refer to the indigenous people, that we are actually on Turtle Island. And so the Americas was referred to as Turtle Island. And so current land use of the 6%, 40 to 70% is to support us. So we have monoculture farms, industries, factories, mining. And now I'm going to turn it back to our work at Urban Harvest, that in 2017, we did a tally of all of the square footage that we put together in terms of our affiliate garden network. So the affiliate garden is community public spaces to grow food where you can go and volunteer and see fruits and vegetables actually being grown and have access to that. That there are 7 acres in the Houston area devoted to community gardens and growing food. Now for urban permaculture, we really want to look at food sovereignty and becoming as independent as we can in our food chain and food supply. And so developing it right in our backyard, because once we do run out of that supply chain of food being shipped across the country and so on, as we experienced during COVID, a lot of people started gardening. So that's very important for food sovereignty. Also in cities, to integrate rather than segregate is to form collaborations, community collaborations between organizations. Stability through diversity. So just like in the prairie, we don't want to have only one plant through the whole prairie because we would have a collapse of different, animal species. That stability through diversity is also having diverse groups and diverse teams to support community agriculture. Creatively use and respond to change. And so by this design program and using these principles, we can come up with solutions based on resources that we already have. And to turn challenges into solutions, to turn the problem into the solution. So just like the journey of life, the curriculum of going through different problems and learning from that is our curriculum in which we can then teach others. Okay, so here is a picture from a nature center here in Houston. And permaculture is site specific. So wherever you are in the world, you would apply it to your climate in your zone. So whether it's tropical wetlands, deserts, alpine forest, temperate forest, there's permaculture for coasts, valleys, mountains, urban areas such as Houston, etc. And so what is our natural ecosystem for the state of Texas and Houston?
Coastal prairies.
Coastal prairies, yes. And so for regenerative gardening, our Gulf Coast prairie, then further north, we have the piney woods, post oak savanna, riparian forest. Permaculture is very rooted in bioregionalism. One of the principles are under the umbrella of efficient energy planning is to divide your home space, your home place into zones for planning. And of course, the areas that you frequent most, your home base would be 0. And then the high maintenance parts of your garden would be in zone 1. And then all the way in zone 5 is where you would have the wild areas. Now, this is a picture of a front yard garden. And so they have integrated nature with an Asian persimmon. And their yard is certified by the State of Houston Parks Board and is a naturalized area. And so here's another map depicting the different zones. I just wanted to show you this so that you get a little idea about this design principles and what it's about. And so definitely solar energy, earthworks, capturing water so the water doesn't run off of your site, so that we're recharging the water table. We don't have to water as frequently, etc. Now this is a backyard garden. And no, this is not my yard. This is the home of Gary Edmondson and Ray Shearer. Yeah, so it's beautiful. They've incorporated native plants with edible plants and the pathways. And so for an urban area, we want to really look at the city from the perspective of the city encompassing all of the zones. So you have your home place, and then the bayous and the arboretum as zone 5. Because we are, a lot more of us within the city are living in higher density multi-unit homes and perhaps only have a patio garden, or you have a very tiny home footprint that we're going to then think outside of the box. Because right now, one of the invisible structures that we have is related to property and laws and commerce. And so if we look at the land, from a whole perspective, a holistic perspective, we can see, okay, within my home place, this is zone 1, and I want to have herbs right outside my window and attract some butterflies. But then also the importance of stewarding the public spaces is even more critical because we all have access to the public spaces. So where is your niche within these areas based on your passions, interests, and skills? Like, where do you fit and bring your skills to steward the public spaces? Okay, so part of the permaculture program is that we do focus on restoring nature, and this was from the class from this spring, and we focused on Japhet Creek on the East End, and that was adopted by a permaculture student. And so just year after year, with his focus on that area, he has brought in community collaborations. So it's actually part of the city parks department right now. It's actually designated as a trail space, and they have a Buffalo Bayou partnership.
What is it?
Japhet Creek, and it's on the east end of downtown. It's down east on Clinton Drive and Waco, out by there, yeah. Okay, so here's another principle, and that's sector planning. So the different sector energies within permaculture would be wind, sun, your slope, your rainfall, pollution, insects, noise. Do you have street lights at night? Do you hear the train frequently? So all of those are sector energies. And placement is very important because you want to take into account all of those things as you plan your garden and increase your yield. And so for urban areas, it's very important to be mindful of invisible structures that I mentioned, but also the sector energies related to community. At a school, we want to look at the sector of staffing. Has there been a turnover? Who's in charge? Who has permission to be in that space to assist in the planting? Or perhaps it's no one, it's going to be guerrilla gardening. And you certainly do not want to be sued by your HOA if you're going to start a prairie in your front yard. And it's developing collaborations and also infiltrating to be part of the leadership so that we can then from the inside change the laws, because growing food is very important. So I love these pictures here. We have the Gregory Lincoln School in the top right. And those students are returning students during a community event, a community work day, and they are mentoring with the garden educators, and then they are teaching the younger students. And behind them is the edible forest. And so we planted and incorporated native plants with fruit trees. And we've had Sally Hilliard and other members from the Native Plant Society over the years come and help us maintain that. Okay, so here's another illustration of location. So you can see, wind energy, where are your low spots to take advantage of those? Where do you want a grape trellis? And also each element has many functions. And so the willow tree, of course, is providing shade. It's also animal forage. It is in the riparian buffer, so it is preventing erosion and stabilizing that bank, and the roots provide habitat for fish and help filter the water. So everything in the landscape, we want to consider the multiple functions and have as many yields as possible. So I'm going to touch a little bit on food forest gardening and layering. So many of you have been gardening for years, and so you know that when you're designing your garden, you want to think about plant height and structure, your upper canopy, mid-story, your ground covers. And so in permaculture, we look at this, but then we also want to incorporate some fruit trees so that we'll have food and we can go out and forage. So I've included this feature of the mulberry tree because it has so many multiple uses, from the fruit, food for birds. It was considered to be like #1 in terms of attracting the most bird species. And once you have it, it multiplies. You may have experienced that. And so right now we do have an epidemic, a quiet epidemic of diabetes and diabetic related comorbidities, and mulberry leaf helps to balance blood sugar. It's tonifying. It's not anything that's going to have a strong action on your system. Coffee is stronger with the caffeine effect of being a nerve stimulant. So when an herb or a plant is tonifying, it's simply nutritive in value. And drinking the tea helps to lower the blood sugar, and they use it in Chinese medicine. And the mulberry tree was also used by the indigenous people. And in the book by Cabeza de Vaca, if y'all have read that, about his travels in Texas and with the native people, during the winter, it would be the very middle of the winter, and they would say, oh, well, don't worry, like soon it'll be time to pick the mulberries. Soon it'll be time to pick the mulberries. Here's another illustration of a forest system. I just want to throw this in so you can see it in different ways. So you can see just based on plant height, you can start to incorporate other edible shrubs with your trees. Now, native trees and native shrubs are extremely important because you want to have at least 2/3 native plants to support your high intensity vegetables. And so, the vine, having a native vine such as this, you'll have it everywhere. And then you can also use the leaves and the fruit for food. So that will feed the birds. It's a native, it grows with little care. Now, this is an example of a design of a garden that's a rain garden. So it's a little bit like a keyhole bed, that it's lower in the center and different wetland plants. We have the lily in there to capture the water running off of the house, and other plants in the berm of the bed. So just within this bed, they've designed it so that they have a rain garden feature, wetland plants, and then plants on the berm, which do not want to have their feet wet. just included these, the button bush and this little rain garden that we put in at a school. And so this was an area that is on a slope, and we planted, native wetland plants there. Okay, so here is Gregory Lincoln Education Center. And so for this design, we really looked at different elements because we wanted to showcase the garden and attract community and community engagement. So we really wanted it to be a place that was inspiring and beautiful. And so again, on the grape arbor, we have native grape and then also some other cultivars, such as the black Spanish grape. Different native plants are incorporated in those beds. And at school gardens, the community engagement piece is so important to develop relationships with the plants, with the gardens, and master naturalists and Native Plant Society members have been instrumental in helping us to maintain these areas. Because having that knowledge of what is a plant that is intentional and which plants we do not want there, the average person does not know. And so the master naturalists have been key in helping us and leading volunteers in that work. A few more examples of urban permaculture, of engaging community and teaching others. And so that the saying that goes, each one teach one, to share what you know. From young children to community members to volunteers sharing with others and bringing their resources have all been instrumental in having successful school and community gardens. And the picture on the lower right, basically there's a section of the school garden which is devoted to native plants, and that's because in large part due to a community volunteer who helps to maintain it. A few volunteers in the garden that we have on the top, the purslane, which grows on its own, and it's opportunity for us to discuss native plants and a highly nutritious native plant, and which you can find at at Fiesta in Hispanic cuisine. And the photo on the right. For a long time, I was just very aggravated with this plant because it's very thorny. Do y'all recognize that plant? No, that's a wild amaranth or calithi, or AKA pigweed. And so it's growing here in the garden. And the saying goes that if you pull one out, then you'll save yourself from having to pull out 100,000 because it has so many seeds. But that problem has turned into a solution for us to teach about cultural connections and native indigenous culture who would use the young leaves as like spinach. And the secret to that is to parboil it first before you eat it. And Mark Merriweather has been instrumental also in sharing recipes and how to eat it and so on. And so we have children collecting seeds from their garden, and they're doing seed saving. Oops, okay, I'm doing something. I'm not sure how to go back.
Where's the mouse? Let's down here. There you go.
How do I advance it again?
Just tap.
Just tap it. Okay. Is it good?
Mhm. Go ahead.
So the principle of cycling energy efficiently, and of course recycling, and this is a method that we use a lot, lasagna gardening and sheet mulching to build soil.
Mouse is gonna be on the.
Just
it's
close
gotta
it
be
up.
over. No, it's gotta be over here and on the little.
Okay.
Arrow at the bottom, right? There.
Of course, ecological pest management of the plants and attracting fauna to do the work for us. And I have these two examples of plant guilds of, having a forest ecology and a group of plants that support each other. And so on the left, we have Gora in there with other tropicals such as moringa and banana. And then on the right, we have elderberry tree along with some other tropicals such as the hibiscus. So we want to work with nature by layering and integrating different plants in the garden. And so the banana is being supported by the sweet potato vines because that is offering shade and ground cover is very low maintenance. And another principle that we want to look at, and it's a key principle when you're designing landscapes for native plants and native plant gardens, is to use the edge and to maximize the edge by having a curvilinear edging for your garden beds rather than straight. And by increasing the edge, then we increase opportunities for nature and people to interact with the plants and wildlife. Okay, some examples at schools and school gardens to observe and interact, and maximizing yield just through the design of the garden and using vertical space. And the little boy on the left, we're taking the area in the orchard of just the single trees by themselves, and we're turning it into an edible forest by expanding the beds to connect them, and also to incorporate native plants, for the ground cover and the shrubs so that we can attract wildlife and most importantly, butterflies. And then you can see on the bottom right, we have a mature edible forest and the kid in there is foraging for some root vegetables. So our PDC course, we do offer the designer certification, which is 100 hours of class time. And it starts the last Sunday in September, and then it runs until the second Sunday in November. And then there's a winter session and a spring session. And then finally, the last module is an independent design project. So it's just a project where you design your project, and one participant designed a book club. And so it can be around community, it could be around a home place, it could be a school garden, it could be property. And so it's just up to the individual to choose it as long as it's fitting the criteria of earth care, people care, and fair share to illustrate those principles. And we are following the curriculum of the Permaculture Institute of North America. So currently, due to our 3-year grant, it funds my position through 2025 so that I am specifically focused on doing outreach for our permaculture program. And also our participants have opportunities to apply to fund part of their design project at a community garden. So our goal is to connect permaculture graduates to community gardens in need in underserved areas. Community gardens and school gardens. I think I just turned it off. And that concludes my presentation. It's 7:55. Just some resources, and then this is a free book you can download from our website, and then that's oh no, that's it. So I do offer our grant funds scholarships, because traditionally our program, we would fund 10% of the participants, because that's part of our giving back, is that 10% of the participants would have scholarships, and then the rest was the cost for all of the modules is nearly $1,000. And so now with our funding, our scholarships are going to be 2/3. And then our paid participants, if you look at it and you want to sign up, there are only 10 paid for spots and there are 20 scholarship spots. Okay, so that's going to run through 2025. And then I hope, like the vision is that we have enough students who want to matriculate and become certified in advanced permaculture teacher training so that we can have more presenters and teachers and leaders in the community. So thank you everybody for having me today.
Any questions from the group? Any questions on Zoom? Are we checking?
I'm watching, there are any questions? I have a question. What is the, do you have a lot of people going through the course? Do you need more places or do you need more people or both?
So right now I am recruiting for the new cohort that's coming on board because we have, part of the cohort that is going to present their designs and receive their certificates. And then I need to recruit more folks. So that little QR code, I'll put it back up if I can figure out how to get there. I may need some help.
Doreen's the expert. Doreen's been saving us.
Well, I have a flyer. Yes, I have a flyer at the back with the QR code to the scholarship link if you want to apply for a scholarship and be part of the next cohort.
Yeah, I have mostly a wild shape and I was considering moringa, but I understand it is an aggressive spreader. So I haven't planted it. How can it be controlled or is it so aggressive that it can get loose and spread everywhere?
Okay, so in urban gardens, they freeze back in a hard freeze.
Oh, they do.
And also when you're in an urban garden, when you see the seed pods, they look like drumsticks. We collect all of our, like in my yard, it's small. So I collect all of the drumsticks and I tried, you can eat them when they're young. And then when they're larger, if you don't collect them, basically they are going to spread by wind. And then once they take root, they'll come up on their own. So if you have a very large property, then, that's the time to decide, is this the right placement? Now up north with a colder climate, people grow it in containers so they can have it as an indoor plant. And then you have, the nutritious leaves that are a complete protein and the highest food source vitamin C.
What plant was it? Moringa.
Moringa, it's a tropical plant.
Protein.
Yeah, so it gets to be, if you, yeah, you can keep them pruned. The pods are heavy, but once they dry, they crack open and then the seeds will spread.
Seed pods and applications for water treatment. I have a moringa tree and it's pretty tall. I have it in a pretty shaded spot, but in the winter it died in the ground and it came back. So it's not too late.
I got them ready to put a bucket and in my backyard next to my papayas and buckets. And it's freeze. I'm not gonna let this freeze kill my stuff this year. So I have buckets to bring it inside.
They're good to grow to the west of your land.
Any more questions?
What's your favorite ground cover?
Well, my favorite ground cover, okay, so I am partial to horse herb because, just kind of volunteers and if you just like clear plants around it and it takes over, it's gentle and I like the property that if you try to dig it up to propagate it, it dies. So it's like, leave me alone. So I like that. Right now, that's one of my favorites.
Does it have the flower?
It has a little tiny yellow flower.
They're bigger than.
of it.
We are doing something dark.
Food. So if you think of what is growing in a forest that you find if you go on a walk to a forested area like in the piney woods. So you're gonna find your berries, you're gonna find blackberries. Well, it's a little bit too humid and hot to find raspberries here, but there are different types of tropical cherries. And then, of course, there's Barbados cherry.
Which are native.
Which are native. Hi, Sally.
And you don't really have time to take them to out of the forest. So the wild are more about permaculture. Where would you direct?
Well, that is a very good question. There are lots of resources on YouTube. And also there are online courses for people who just want to take it completely remote. You can take it remote through the University of Oregon. They are pretty amazing videos. Yeah.
YouTube channel is great.
Yeah.
Tell you that the 100-hour course is a lot of fun.
So who is certified? Are you, so we have Susie Shapiro that is certified. Yeah, so we are trying to develop more community events for past participants and future participants. And there's also a Southeast Texas Permaculture Network meetup group. And so for people who are permaculture enthusiasts, by joining that network, and then there's a monthly meetup, kind of like a monthly social. And also we hope to have just like more one-time or smaller workshops with permaculture focus. And so hopefully you'll be able to see those on our website, on our classes calendar in the next year.
How is your garden doing with this heat?
How is my garden? Well, so our orchard, we have seven citrus trees that are in full sun, and citrus trees are understory trees. So they are just taking a beating being in full sun, and we're having to go out there every day to water. And so we're making plans to incorporate other native trees so that they will have part shade. And then also to put in a swale so that it will capture the water, and filtrate. Because right now there's just, we have an issue with standing water. It's either standing water or bone dry and compact. And so we want to do some amendments there. And then in my backyard, we have things like a bonsai garden. It's over densely planted, so we have to water pretty frequently, but the native plants are doing great. And so we had frog fruit, and the frog fruit kept everything really lush, but my household partner thought that it was too tall and tangly, and so he weed whacked it down, and so now it just kind of burned it. It was just like not the right time to do it.
Well, frog fruit will bounce back.
Yes, it will bounce back, but it's just so hot and dry that it just looks singed.
Yeah. Less.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I just had a request for the resource. Yeah, let's see if I can go back here.
Okay. Well, all right. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, everybody.
Did this die?
I think so.
Yeah, someone was saying shade. Chili pekin also is another native edible.
It's very hot.
And then, yeah. Oh, yeah, it is. It's spicy. You only need one for, yeah, and then Sustainable World Radio is a really good permaculture podcast. So write it down, Sustainable World Radio. You can just Google it. I'll just share that. That's how I got into permaculture. And yeah, great job, Carol. Wow, what an inspiring presentation. Thank you, Archie, for organizing this partnership. I'm so glad to partner with such a great organization as Urban Harvest. Wow, I had no idea how much work y'all do. Y'all do a lot. Y'all do a lot. I'm jazzed. I guess without anything else? Yeah, we're nearing the end of our presentation. Thank you, everyone who joined us on Zoom. Y'all can go ahead and how many?
30 something.
Oh, 35 attendees on Zoom, and y'all, I'm in the room and we have 63 plus chairs and all of them are filled. We have people standing in the back, so thank you, everyone. I think we're gonna have to renew a contract for a bigger room, which is such a good problem to have. And yeah, so Zoom, y'all can filter off. Thank you for coming, but